afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the September Finance Committee meeting. Would like to tell you that Councilmember Clark is away on business, and I will be chairing the committee meeting today. Presently, we have 23 consent items, and we have 4 general agenda items. And as in the past and going forward, we'll take the consent items first. If there are any items that council members, committee members would like to see pulled for further discussion and or questions.
Thank you. C15.
I have C15, but I also have C1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 14, and 21. And they're going to be quick, y'all. It's not going to be, it's just a simple answer of a question. Mayor Pro Tem, do you have anything?
No, I do not.
With that, may I have a motion to accept the following balance of the consent? What's left of it, not much.
See if I can move for that to be accepted.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded. We accept the balance of the consent item agenda. Those in favor, vote yes. Those opposed, no. Thank you. Secretary, would you read the first item, please?
C1, consideration of items relating to the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget.
Ms. Tony. The reason that I highlighted this was, again, you got to remember, we sit at home and we go through these agendas and then we start to write questions. Okay. My question was the additional $148,000 due to money spent on the contract by the previous contractor, and does the city receive any financial compensation from the contractor who walked away? Or is it we're just paying him for the services that he did? And I know this is Carver Road. I know it's in Mayor Pro Tem's ward. Mr. Duquesne.
Damon Duquesne, Assistant City Manager. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the committee. So we did pay the contractor for the work performed. City Attorney's Office and city staff are still pursuing the bonding company for that project, and the balance was paid from, where did we get the bond money?
14 bonds.
2014 bonds to complete the project so that the citizens weren't left with a half-completed project in front of their properties.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, Mayor. Let me call you Mayor. Councilwoman. I did talk to Mr. Duquesne. We had a deep conversation about it. And once the people who quit the job left, he immediately started working very hard was to complete the project, and it's just about completed. My question to him, do we have to still pay these people? He told me, no, we only paid them for what they had done.
The work they've done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you. That's all I have. Could I please have a motion to approve?
Move for approval, Madam.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please vote yes. All those opposed, no.
Yes, the voting software works much better when Mr. Clark's out.
Thank you. It passes unanimously. Next item, please.
C2, consideration of items regarding the 2019 Burn Justice Assistance Grant.
My question on this is, Chief, can we get a report on how many cameras have been purchased and their locations? And maybe public safety has already broached that, but I think the council would like to see that since we're receiving monies for the cameras. And we all know what our situation is right now so far as particularly gunshot shootings and whatever. I'd like to know.
I'm sorry, were you done? You said you like, okay. So I can get you the information. I don't have that with me at this time, but I can get you the information on the number of reports and bring that back to you. Number of cameras, I'm sorry, and bring that report back to you.
Thank you so much. Can I have a motion, please? May I have a motion, please?
Motion approved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please vote by saying yes. All those opposed, no. Thank you, and it passes. Next item, please.
C3, consideration of items relating to the acquisition of property at 1640 Bethania Rural Hall Road.
Well,
Fine land.
is this Mr. Royston? My question, Mr. Royston, is, and maybe I should have, I don't know, anyway, is this the same property for the Freedman's Park in Bethania, or is this the other side of the park in the Mayor Pro Tem's ward?
I'm not sure which ward this particular property, if it falls in the area
It
that.
says
the
in
Mayor
the
Pro Tem-
attachments that it's in the northeast ward. That's what the picture says.
Right. It's the corner of property that's on the northeastern corner of Long Creek Park, where through the master plan process, it was recommended by the community that we add a smaller parking area, maybe a smaller playground. We thought the addition of this property would allow us to have better access and egress into that particular area of the park for any future development.
So again, my question is this the park that had been discussed before, that's the people, the African-American community, the historical community wanted for a pocket park, a small park? That's why I'm asking. Is it a different side of this?
No, this particular piece is independent. It's strictly just for the Long Creek development.
Okay.
That other piece was for the property off of Coger Lane.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion to accept?
Just a quick comment.
Councilmember McIntyre.
We're buying an acre and a half for $23,000. That seems like a very wise move.
Okay. May I have a motion for approval, or Mayor Pro Tem? Do you-
Was this negotiated by the Conservation Fund? How did we come about?
It's in the report, it says it was.
Yes.
So that's part of that partnership that we had earlier on this project.
Yep.
They were involved in the initial acquisition of helping us acquire all of this land originally.
That's correct.
So they're just continuing the work.
That's correct. That's correct. Mayor Pro Tem, do you have
Yeah,
questions?
did somebody ever say it's in the northeast or the north?
Northeast. Northeast.
But the question should have been asked firmly.
Yeah.
Right, let's see.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda item?
Move for approval, madam.
Second?
So moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please do so by voting yes. All those opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. Next item.
C4, resolution authorizing the Office of Sustainability to apply for the VW Settlement Phase 1 DC Tax Charge Program Grant.
I don't know who this is. This Mr. DeCane's Office of Sustainability.
No, that.
Taylor.
Johnny?
Mr. Taylor.
Oh, Mr. Taylor. I'm sorry. Yes, you. My question, Mr. Taylor, is, again, I applaud all the efforts of the Office of Sustainability for applying for the VW mitigation ZEV fast charge program. But after reviewing the proposed sites, I saw how they were selected. And my question is, was there any consideration given to any other frequently traveled areas in the city? For example, Wake Forest University, the Coliseum, the Fairground, University Parkway. It seemed like all of and I understand the interstate and Business 40, I got that. But I also saw that there were potential places like at Southeast Plaza Shopping Center, which is the southeast side of town. I saw Union Station, which is the east side of town. And then I saw the hospital, Forsyth Hospital, Wake Forest Hospital, Forsyth Tech, Haynes Mall. And again, I'm just wondering why none were considered to be on the north side of town, whereas when we have activities this time of year, whether it's the fair, whether it's Wake football games, the conferences and conventions at the Coliseum, why we wouldn't have considered putting a charging station at that end of the city.
First of all, good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Madam Chairperson and other members of the committee. These locations were chosen based strongly on the 40 corridor. And as you mentioned, the state was particularly about that location being the anchor of the project. we can still go back and look at something on the northern side of town that may be closer to 40. We plan to use the program to evaluate how effective it would be, monitor expenses, and we are planning to expand the program, which will actually capture every ward, including the north.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Even though you were going to do that, and I direct this to city manager, this should have been something you should have been well aware of, knowing how sensitive all of us about the wards we represent.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke, I actually had several conversations with Mr. Taylor about this when I saw the map. The challenge we have is the criteria given to us by the state for getting the grant. If you look at the color coding on the map, was all central around 40. So that's why we talked about how we want to expand it, because there are plenty of other areas where there's lots of traffic between the Beltway and 52 where I think there will be a demand for it.
So if you do not get the funds to do it, then will the city be able to find some funds?
I think what Mr. Taylor and I are hoping is that we get these. I think we're going to get these funds the way it's set up with the Volkswagen settlement. But our plan is to expand it with local funds to do some additional sites.
We hold him to it.
Yes.
Councilman McIntyre.
So this is essentially a pilot program, paid
Yes.
for by somebody else.
Yes, sir.
That once we look at the numbers, and if it makes as much sense as we think it will, then we'll expand it with our own money.
Yes, sir.
And just to be clear, the VW settlement is when Volkswagen cheated on their mile per gallon
Don't you
or
drive
emission.
one of those?
I do drive one. Gasoline power. So anyway, just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
You know.
May I have a motion for approval?
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please do so by voting yes. All those opposed? Thank you. The motion passes. Next item, please.
C8, resolution approving a long-term lease agreement with New Singular Wireless PCS LLC for space on the jointly owned city-county radio tower located off Fairlawn Drive, located in the Northwest Ward.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. Tom Kruska, CIO.
Good afternoon. I appreciate the shared partnership with the county on Fairlawn Drive and the tower. But can we get a straightforward report of how many towers we own or we share ownership with partnerships, and what is the revenue coming forth as well as the interest based on the time of the lease? Like this one is, I think, a 25-year deal. I know you don't have that information for me today, but I would appreciate you getting that to the council.
Yeah, I'll work with interagency communications in Forsyth County, and we can pull that together for all the towers.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
May I have a motion?
Motion approved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, let it be known by voting aye. Yes. All those opposed? Looks like Robert messing with the system. Well, looks like everybody voted green up here. It's been, thank you, it's moved and passed. Next item, please.
C14, resolution awarding contract for tennis court resurfacing at Carver High School, located in the Northeast Ward, and 14th Street, located in the East Ward. Quality Seal Coating and Sports Services, LLC, in the amount of $153,380.
Mr. Royston, I went online when I was doing this to find, hopefully a direct link to get to the tennis courts of where they are actually in the city. It kept sending me to the layout, and it's not you, it's just, we got to work on this. It gave me the recreation and parks, but it only gave me the recreation centers where tennis courts were, which we know if we have 114 tennis courts, they can't be at 10, 11 recreation centers. What's the plan for other city court repair or replace, particularly mine, Kimberly in the North Ward? I appreciate finally that we're repairing Carver. and 14th Street, finally, because back in the day, those were courts that we all played quite regularly. But what about Kimberly? Because you and I think some of your staff, we've surveyed the damage up there, and it's really, really in bad shape.
Madam Chair, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the committee, staff are currently going through and performing an inventory. We're using our deferred maintenance assessment as a baseline. We're actually going out, digging deeper to really get some hard numbers on where we need to make similar repairs for tennis courts and basketball courts throughout the city. It's something that we're currently working on, and I can bring that to you at a future date once we were able to complete that report.
Yeah. And do we have enough funding or somewhat funding? I know we have enough for these two, but do we have any more funding for any more courts if we wanted to do one or two more before the next budget cycle?
I will have to go back and check to see if we have additional funding available. The funds that are being used for these courts are straight from the 2018 GO bonds, but we are looking at creative ways to stretch a penny because we know that we have needs that we need to fill. It's something that we're looking into, and we'll look once we're able to gather those numbers, sit down with senior staff and see what we're able to complete.
Okay.
Kimberly Park is one of the ones that we are looking at that are in dire need of repairs.
Right. And I guess the reason why some of us, particularly me, are so passionate about Kimberly is because of the history behind. We wouldn't have African American tennis without the Archie family, and the Archie family being at Kimberly Park and the red dirt courts that were there. So when we got them done about a decade ago? No, 14. It was 13 or 14. It was great, but I don't know what happened. I would have thought that the courts would have lasted a lot longer than they've lasted right now, because they just don't look like we got this done. And are we using the same contractor that we used back then? I saw where there were two that bid it.
Quality sport, we call them quality sport services. They've done work for us in the past. The issues at Kimberly, we found that we've had very similar issues in other places. The Titan Tracks has worked when we haven't had the amount of base failure that continues to have the cracks to reopen. Knowing what the issues are there at Kimberly, it's going to require additional work in terms of milling it down, putting a new layer of asphalt down, coating that, striping it, and then rebuilding it from there. Just covering the cracks is just not going to work there at Kimberly.
So Kimberly could potentially look the way Carver does.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem.
Indirectly, we have a very lovely tennis court up at Oak Summit.
Yep.
And we are begging to get some use of it. That's a very structured recreational area with the park, with the shelter, with the baseball field, and people are just coming and going. It's one that's well used. But I don't think we are working as hard as we ought to get a tennis group going up there. Are you familiar with a plan that we want to get going up there?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Burke. We are working with Kevin with Flex Tennis, and we're very specific.
Say that again.
We're working with Kevin from Flex Tennis. They're managing our tennis program at Joe White, and we were very specific when we sent out the RFQ to include not just certain sites, tennis locations throughout the city, but to include all of them, give them access to all of them, including Oak Summit. And they are working with the community to develop a program there specifically for Oak Summit.
But I don't want to conflict. Is Miss Logan Ford in here? No. She's not in here?
She had to take her son to the doctor.
Okay. Well, you need to be having a communication with her as well as with Miss Childress, Bailey Childress. Is Attorney Andrews in here? He's not here. Well, anyway, you have a conversation with them because we are trying to get through somebody to support a tennis group up there, a private group.
Okay.
And we need to let them know we need all the help we can get.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, I can tell you that the Kimberly Park Tennis Club here in the city, who is also one of the supporters of Flex Tennis in the city's programs, we taught tennis to over 1,000 children this summer, And we are in the process of expanding the programs to Oak Summit.
Okay.
We want to make sure that we have a fall program and a winter program, but I do know for a fact that we're expanding it, and I do know that Oak Summit is on the list to receive it, and we'll be in touch with the people in the community. We just got our Community Tennis Association verification and certificate from the United States Tennis Association. So we're looking, again, for great things to happen here in the city of Winston-Salem with partnerships, and we got you.
Yeah, but let me say this to the city manager. With someone who's going to give to support a tennis court, a tennis group up there, my understanding, Mrs. Childress was supposed to be a person to come in to assist us with projects. Is that a fact?
I need to get back to that. I know that Ms. Logan Ford was working on with you about some community support. So let me get back. I think between all three, we can really get a program going up there.
Because these people are coming into the city, and they want to do something that will assist to show that they have an interest in not just coming to do a business, but to also, and legally, we've had all of that reviewed.
Yes, ma'am.
It's legally right what they want to do, but we want to make sure we have a staff person that will be there ready to assist them with what your group may be doing, talking to the resident up in Oak Summit. We have so many houses up there, and we have organized people up there, neighborhood groups, and I think with their children and with the interest that they show, we'll be able to get something going, but we're going to have to show from the city to give them that support also. All right. Follow up with that, Mr.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
May I have approval of item C14, please?
Motion to approve?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please do so by voting yes. All those opposed, no, and the motion passes unanimously. Next item, please.
C15, resolution approving a contract with Sum Total Systems LLC for software maintenance and support services in the amount of $139,766.25.
Councilmember McIntosh.
Mr. Prescott, my question on this is was this company employed when we had our issue last year with our payroll system? Was this vendor in that loop?
The January, February incident?
Yeah.
Same vendor.
Okay, so we feel confident contracting with them again?
It wasn't really, it was a perfect storm, and it was a combination of some of their software not working like we thought with the open enrollment to the new year, but we also had key experts retire, FMLA issues, and the system crash. So they were part of it, but I will say they were there with us to get it resolved.
So the vendor responded to your satisfaction?
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right, I'm good then. Motion approved?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, let it be known by voting yes. All those opposed, no. It's been passed. Thank you. Next item.
C21, resolution awarding contracts for playground safety resurfacing, Swing Kingdom LLC in the amount of $264,695, and Young Express AL LLC in the amount of $24,520.
Who's got this? You were on your way out the door, weren't you?
No, ma'am. I sometimes have to be in 3, 4 places at the same time. It's okay.
My question, Mr. Royston, on item number 21 is it talks about, I guess, the playground resurfacing, the pouring, or whatever, for the splash pads or something. And I guess all I wanted to know was where are these project locations at, and does this amount take care of that, all of what you're trying to do?
It takes care of the majority of the locations that we have throughout the city where we use engineered wood fiber. However, there are some locations where, due to heavy rains and some of our property being in flood-prone areas, where we're looking to go with poured-in-place rubber surfacing as opposed to wood fiber. It will stay in place. It gives us a lot longer lifespan on it. It's much nicer. It's just easier to manage. And so there are some locations around splash pads because of the surfacing that the children track from the playgrounds into the splash pad areas that that clogs up the circulation systems. We're looking at replacing some of those locations at some of our higher use splash pads. And the ones that are outside of that, where we aren't doing the port in place, we're doing the engineered wood fiber, and we believe we'll be able to make a large dent and take care of all of our locations that need the engineered wood fiber.
How many splash pad projects we have? I know mine was one of the first. Kimberly?
9 total. Once Nelson Malloy Park is complete, we'll have 9 total.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you.
Mine is not.
Mayor Pro Tem and then Councilmember Scipio.
This is not a question, but Mr. Roster, this is an opportunity, since we talk about all our parks we have. There are citizens in this community who would like to contribute, maybe benches, I do, trees. So what else can citizens do? Because some of the citizens who are getting older, they are living pretty well and they don't mind giving. Would you tell? I think that's important.
It is important. We're actually working. I've had some discussions with our marketing department to roll out some do some advertising about our memory tree program, our memory bench program. But in addition to that, we're working on a newer program in-house where people will be able to buy pavers, brick pavers, that we can use throughout our park system. We think it's a more efficient use of space. They're economical. They're long-lasting. It just makes it easier. Gives citizens another option to provide some sort of memorable piece of a park amenity that they could be using throughout our park system. So I am having discussions with our marketing department. We'll continue those discussions, and we will have some things coming out here shortly.
Councilmember Scipio, and then Councilmember McIntyre.
Mr. Rorson, can you tell us if all of our playgrounds are involved or only selected ones? And if they are selected, are any of them in the East Ward?
I can get you the total list of the playgrounds that are in the East Ward. The locations were selected based on safety, where we had the highest need. There are some locations, some additional park locations that are not on that list that we've begun to replace the safety service using in-house staff. But I can provide that list to you with a breakdown of the playgrounds in your respective area.
Thank you. Councilmember McIntyre.
This is more a comment than a question. I wanted to go back and address Mayor Pro Tem's question about people who want to contribute to a public park. Yeah. We started, a group started around Haynes Park Community Volunteers, and between their desire to help and staff's desire to have them help, we're working on more of a structure that can be used at other parks around town that's easy for folks who want to be involved, want to be engaged, want to donate, to be able to just do that without having to recreate the wheel each time.
Okay.
Right. And so the parks staff has done a really good job on that, and I appreciate that. So the second one is going to be is Winston Square Park, which has worked really well. So that's something we can hopefully roll out to all the parks around town and get more involvement.
So what do they do? What are y'all doing?
Well, in the case of Haynes Park, it's their effort. They wanted to make it pretty. They wanted to put in flowers and trees and plantings. Winston Square Park may be a little bit different, so it's not completely boilerplate. So there'll be some flexibility based on what people want to do with their own parks.
That's good.
May I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, let it be known by voting yes. All those opposed, no. And the motion passes. Thank you. Now we move to the general agenda.
G1, consideration of items relating to Renfro Corporation.
Good afternoon, Chairman Adams, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the committee.
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
So this item authorizes the city to provide up to $297,355 in economic development assistance to the Renfro Corporation to be distributed over a 5-year period. The city's financial assistance will be used to partially offset the company's capital outlay associated with the upfit of space at the company's prospective new headquarters location here in Winston-Salem. And for those who are not familiar with Renfro, Renfro Corporation is a global leader in the design, manufacture, marketing, merchandising, and selling of legwear products in North America and selected international markets. The company provides a full line of branded and private label sock products that many folks, I'm sure, will be familiar with, that include Fruit of the Loom, Dr. Scholl's, Ralph Lauren, New Balance, Copper Sole, Wrangler, and Carhartt. The company was founded as Renfro Hosiery Mills in 1921 and currently boasts a global workforce of 5,500 employees. Renfro presently is headquartered in Mount Airy, North Carolina, and has a workforce of 311 employees approximately at that headquarters location. And the company is presently seeking to better position itself for future growth opportunities, which is why it is considering relocating to Winston-Salem, among other cities that we understand include New York and Los Angeles. The company does plan to relocate approximately 175 positions from its headquarters to whichever site it ultimately chooses, and create up to 50 new jobs over the course of its first 5 years of operation at its new location. And those average salaries for the new and relocated positions range from $50,000 for entry-level positions all the way up to $240,000 for the executive-level positions. We'll note that Bob Leake with Winston-Salem Business, Inc. is here to answer any questions you might have as he has been shepherding this project through.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the council? Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. This is, in my opinion, a unique opportunity for the city. I just was thinking, I can't remember a corporate headquarters project that we've had a chance to work on coming this way.
Yeah.
It's a very relatively inexpensive project, and the fact that it does pay for itself. We always say that these projects do pay for themselves from the taxes generated. It's not like we're taking money from one part of our budget and helping for this. It works out to about $1,300 a job, well-paying jobs. And the thing I'm impressed with is the company's commitment to improving their diversity here in our as they move to a more urban setting, and will allow them to do that. And the fact that there is a provision within this that there is an incentive if they hire low and moderate income individuals from a neighborhood revitalization strategy area, they would get a little extra incentive for doing that. So hopefully we can really see some good results there. But I think it's a strong project for us and hopefully give us a boost in the right direction.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes. I'm pleased that the mayor would bring up about job opportunities. We've spent an awful lot of tax dollars, and we cannot show from those dollars how many people we've employed who live right here in Winston-Salem who are capable and able. We've encouraged the mayor on many occasions, I have, to be more reaching out. If this is what Renfro is going to do, then from the day on, if we vote for this to pass at the Monday's meeting, he, as well as the rest of us, should be encouraging people when they come into this city with Mr. Evans Raleigh taking the lead, the city manager. You should be encouraging, because it's a shame when you look at how many dollars we have spent, tax dollars, to bring companies here. And I've been one of the ones who's been out front back there when we first started talking about incentives. I do not have a problem with incentives, but I do have a problem that we cannot show through all of these years any more individuals who's been hired or put in some type of job training to meet the needs for these jobs. Now, Mr. Evans, when you talked about the job opportunities, how do they propose to, if this passes, which I feel is going to pass, come in here? How would you help the people who need the training to become a part of the job market for Renfro?
Mayor Pro Tem Burke, I have not explicitly had that conversation with the company, but I believe Mr. Leake may have had some discussions directly with the company.
Let Mr. Leake come up. Where is Mr. Leake?
Madam Chair, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the committee, Bob Leake, 1080 West 4th Street, Winston-Salem 27101. We have had ongoing conversations with Renfro throughout this project about the desire of this community to have local people hired by companies that move into this community. Y'all made that very clear, and we make that very clear when we talk to companies that we're dealing with. One of the reasons Renfro is interested in relocating into a community like Winston-Salem is because it will give them an opportunity to have a much broader pool of employee opportunities to choose from. It's a challenge for them to recruit talent to the location that they're currently operating out of. And so they're well aware of your desire. We've made sure to have that discussion with them. I know the mayor has also had conversations with them. They would plan to work very closely, obviously, with groups like Forsyth Tech and others in the community that assist in locating people to go to work for local companies and to help them with the training that's required to do that. And so we would continue to press forward on that issue.
Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Lee, what kind of jobs are we talking about?
Initially, the jobs that will be here will be everything from entry-level accounting support, financial services, general office operations, those types of things. They will relocate a number of people that are already on staff, and so they will add to that number as they continue to expand, and they believe that'll be about 50 jobs over the course of the next 4 to 5 years.
New jobs?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, some years ago, when you had people like SEP, ESR, they found people to train, and some of these people were trained in doing secretarial work, and they became administrators. They got further education. And with us having Forsyth Tech, and when I hear these people on television talking about it's a shame with community colleges and what we ought to be doing, and I told each one of them superintendents they ought to hold their heads down in shame to have a career center where you have all kinds of jobs, and you have a community college where you have all kinds of vocational jobs that you could have, and to have all the poverty and the unemployment and the underemployment in this city. Now, I feel that everybody has their own mind. The mayor has his, I've got mine. I think as the person who leads this city and talk to all these business people, this ought to be your task to make sure that they are accountable, Mayor. That what kind of jobs, you go to Forsyth Tech, if there are people that can be trained, then you need to try to get them into a training. And then these will be the individuals that you could show as an example. I've heard this councilwoman say on many occasions about the jobs, but we haven't seen it yet. So we need to see it, so.
Madam Chair, if I might just respond. I've had a really good conversation with the president of the company, and he has assured me of his commitment to diversity. So I can assure you it's going to work out strongly. And we've got a good track record, frankly. If you look at I just saw a report. I thought it went to you, but it must have went someplace else. So
What was the report about?
A report on the past companies that we've worked with, the 6 most recent ones there that showed the.
Did I request that?
Mr. Raleigh sent it to you back in February.
Oh, back in February.
Okay, so it looked pretty good, but so I hear what you're saying, Councilmember, and I certainly agree that we will continue to push and look for accountability on that.
Mr. McIntosh.
It's nice to get a win. I mean, I know this isn't done yet, but having somebody move in to our community, and these folks have sort of tried us already. They're in the East Ward. They currently have a location in Bailey Power Plant, so they've given us a try, like what they saw, and now they're coming back. And hopefully we'll take on a much bigger location here. So I'm just happy we're seeing this inbound traffic instead of outbound traffic. Thank you.
Councilmember Scipio, then Councilmember Lawson.
I think this is a great opportunity for us again to have a company to move its headquarters here, and I do empathize with the fact that we have people who can't often get into these entry-level positions, and I think part of it is because there's a comfort level going to Forsyth Tech, but we don't reach out into the community to go to those who are really working with the hard to employ, like the Urban League. And I would encourage us as we try to make these deals and bring companies to talk about those organizations that are already working with the hardest people to get employed. Because many of the people who need the employment aren't at Forsyth Tech. But there are those being trained at the Urban League and some of our other community groups. So if we can make sure that there are some partnerships that are created so that there is a true funnel into these jobs, I think that would be what we should be doing.
Councilmember Larson.
Yes, I'm very excited considering the number of companies that have recently announced moving to Charlotte and other places. It's sort of the brain drain that the city's had in the last bit, that we are in fact bringing new fresh, bright people back in and creating an industry that we hope will grow and become another great anchor for our economy. My question really evolves around, though, this question of payment, and just for the public's information, the $297,000 that the city is going to make available to expedite this move to our city. Can somebody, maybe Evan or whoever, can elaborate on how we distribute that money and what the payback on that will be to the city?
Certainly. Councilmember Larson, I can answer that question for you. So in terms of the structure of this particular deal, so it is a total of $297,000. That amount represents the sum total that is anticipated to be 65%, I should say, of the total benefit, that the tax benefit that the city is expected to receive over a 10-year period. The benefit will be paid out over a 5-year period with an upfront payment of approximately 77% of that total, which is $231,000. And that's really to satisfy the company's need to offset its initial relocation expenses. So every subsequent payment will be made after the company achieves its job creation and retention, the expectations is spelled out in the agreement over the next 5 years, and they would also be eligible to receive the subsequent payments after they pay their tax bill.
So we're totally guaranteed to get our money back.
We are. We do have strong clawback provisions.
Right. That's exactly the point. Thank you.
Any other comments? One thing that I wanted to ask was, where is it relocating to? If it's in Bailey Tower, where is it going? Does anyone know?
It's in the downtown area. They're looking at several properties at this time.
Okay. Mr. Raleigh and City Manager, when did we start to use the $1,500 bonus for selecting citizens out of neighborhood revitalization strategy areas?
Councilmember Adams, that particular provision was put into the economic development guidelines in this last revision, which took place, I believe, in October of 2015. I believe is when that provision was added.
I remember. Do we have any data or any companies or anyone that took advantage of the incentive? And if I can just blanket, do we have any data? Meaning, if they said they hired 20 people and they got paid $1,500 a job, do we have any data that gives us a sense of who these people are, what parts of the city they came from? Do we have that? No?
Chairman Adams, I don't believe we have that data, and to my knowledge, I don't know that we have had a company take full advantage of that incentive at this particular point, but I need to look into that to see.
Okay. My question would be, my train of thought is, if we have that type of incentive out there, and we can't even get people to hire people, and we're giving them $1,500 to hire poor folks. We evidently, to me, don't get me wrong, we good, but we need to be better. And maybe we need to take a look at, again, and I mentioned this today, we need to see what Raleigh, Charlotte, Durham, Greensboro are doing that may be like this, or it may not be like this, but one, how do they validate, verify that the process is working, that whatever incentive that we're offering, that people are taking advantage of it, but this particular incentive, are we really making a difference with the people that matter the most, which are poor folks, poor people? Yeah. And I just think that, again, we can do better than this. I mean, I think it's great that we're looking to get a headquarters here, because we are brain dead right now. It reminds me, Councilmember Taylor, of 2010 and Mayor Pro Tem, when the house was on fire and the recession hit and we were losing jobs and people like it's nobody's business. And we were looking for a win-win. We just wanted one job or one something that could give us a feeling that we are back on track. And again, I think there's still, Mr. Lee, some particulars we need to work out on this, Mr. Garrity and the mayor. And Mayor Pro Tem, I hear you, I feel you. I think this is an opportunity for us to make a difference and be able to showcase to our citizens that we mean business. Because if we are telling them that we're offering incentive, there's money out there for people to hire people that really need to hardly employ some, Councilmember Scipio. We need to be able to show them that win-win in a corporate America or business. You always want to tout your success stories to your customer base. And I just don't think we've been doing that very well. I think we need to come up with something. Mr. Raleigh, I think we need to, Mr. Garrity, again, if we have to go benchmark another company, city across the country. Mayor Pro Tem.
I was going to say, I've said it so many times that I don't think that we tell the story about this city. It's no time to be modest and hold back like you are not a full, credible city manager or a full, credible mayor. You all act like you're shy about how you want to talk about what has been accomplished in this city. And the folks who have an attitude about what we have not done, they play up on that, which is not the truth. If we had not done some of the things years back, this city would have been a dead city because people were leaving us. But we still, even though we got criticism, we still voted for those incentives that they told us not to do. Right. But had we not voted for them, we could have forgotten about Winston-Salem. It could have been, go back and get your horse and wagon or whatever the people was riding.
Tumbleweeds. Tumbleweeds.
But if you don't tell, and I've said to the city manager, you got to market this city off. You can't be shy and act like, well, you've got to stand up and say, this is what we do.
I'm telling you.
This is why people come. We must be doing a little bit right, even though some say we're not, because we have increased with population. We have increased with housing. So something must be right. And I just think that this project we're talking about, we ought to showcase it and make sure it is accountable. If we are dealing with giving incentives, we need to make sure. If you don't, who will?
Right. Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you. I agree with the comments at the table in terms of this being a win for the city of Winston-Salem, especially those jobs that are being created. And on top of that, we have had some deflating losses, but this is a victory if this potentially passes. We also have a moral obligation to make sure that we protect honorably the taxpayer dollars. So it has been mentioned very briefly about the incentives, about the clawback provisions. So I guess I'll direct my question either to the manager, to the assistant city manager, or to our attorney, Attorney Carmen. If you can just briefly give us, or the citizens who might be watching this or wanting to get more information, an idea of the clawback provisions. And it's important that our tax dollars are being protected. So tell us a little bit about the clawback provisions and the protections that are in place for the tax dollars that we're putting into this project to create these jobs.
Well, Councilmember Taylor, I'll take that question if city attorney or city manager wants to weigh in as well. I guess I'll defer to them. But I would say that it's standard operating procedure for the city in any of its economic development agreements to have very stringent provisions requiring the company to meet certain obligations as set forth in the agreements. One of those being the payments. So every company that receives payments from us, there's a floor for their operations. There's something in every agreement that speaks to what is to transpire in terms of the money that has been paid out to the company should they cease operations. Typically, we are protected very, very firmly in the first several years of every agreement. So even if the company has performed well for the first 2, 3, 4 years, should they cease operation at some point, after that, we are still generally entitled to all, if not the majority, if not all, of our money back at that point. And again, the way that we structure incentives, typically, we pay for performance. So it is standard practice for us only to pay at the point at which staff is able to verify that the company has A, paid its taxes, and B, has performed in terms of job creation or retention to the level that is specified in the agreement. And so if the company does not achieve those minimum thresholds, then we either prorate the payment or they may not, in certain cases, be eligible to receive a payment at all. And so, again, we only pay them the point at which we are paid and can verify their performance.
Well, and I think that word verify is very important. I see, Madam Attorney, you wanted to weigh in.
The only thing I would add to that is that in terms of ceasing operations, the way it's defined, the company could go out of business or it could lay off a certain number of employees, and if they lay off that particular number, it's considered a cessation in operations, so they still will have to pay the money, even if they're operating on a shoestring workforce.
Well, I think that sums up what I was about to say. In politics, we have this terminology. It started on the presidential level: trust, but verify. I mean, this company has proved that it operates honorably, but there are mechanisms in place to verify. And if we put these tax dollars into the pot, there will be trust, but there will be verification to make sure they're doing what they say that they're going to do.
Absolutely. Mr. Garrett.
One thing that, Madam Chair and Mayor Joines and other members of the committee, that I've talked to Mr. Raleigh about is he's got some new staff in his MWB BIA section, and we want to expand their efforts a little bit to do like we do with minority vendors and verification, to do more first outreach with these large companies as far as helping them, almost like matchmakers, helping them, connecting them to minority jobs and saying, hey, we've got this $1,500 incentive, almost like paying a bounty. And then also we're going to do a better job of proactively going out and doing more verification on the other side. So he's working on that plan, and he's looking at other cities to see how they do it.
One of the things, too, that Mr. Garrity, that, I know for the past decade, when I mentioned compliance and auditing and process, and I know my council folk, they were kind of, always when I told them, but like Councilmember Taylor said, you got to verify. Mm-hmm. People can tell you whatever they want. Back in the day, I remember the union used to come out to the plant, the Teamsters, the president, and all of those, and they would sit all day and count and document the employees. If they knew in the plant that they had a membership, they had 610 employees, but we only got 400 memberships, they needed their data. See, we didn't have computers and all that back then, so they had to actually send their folks out from the union hall to sit at the fence where you came out after you punched the clock to verify, yes, race, age possibly, gender, all of that, numbers. We don't do that anymore. If a company tells us that they're hiring minorities, women, they're doing the best efforts, we take them for their word. And like Mr. Councilman Taylor said, I'm not calling them a liar, but I got to verify. And if I verify and you're doing your job, good for you. We'll remember that and we'll tell the others that you're doing it. But I think we can do better, and this has given us an opportunity, council, mayor, staff. We can be innovative here. We can come up with something different that helps to hopefully give us a process that we can use as we go forward to attract businesses here that claim they want to come here. They claim they want to play the game, but they might not be playing it the way we think, and we're giving them our money. And I think it's time for us to show some gumption and do what we need to do.
Madam.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
This is not new to the city manager. He has been told, as a city manager, he should make his staff more accountable. Why do you think when we ride out on some of these streets that's supposed to be completed, they still have cracks and half done? It's because they are not dealing with quality control. And then we talk about sustainability, and we just need to do a 100% better job of looking at the bankroll that taxpayers put into this city, making our city staff more accountable for our money, being more accountable to the taxpayer. It's just a fact, and I think they handle our money too loosely. And one thing that Councilwoman Scipio said about the Urban League, we should have always had a close relationship with them because they do a good job of training people. They have already people that they can pull from their roster of folks who've been through our training. So coming back together, communicating, and just not letting us be somebody sitting over here and they sitting over there.
And we also have ESR, as you said, we have a whole bunch of them that have been training hard to employ folks for a very, very long time and got a great track record. If there are no more questions, comments, may I have a motion for approval of G1?
Motion approved.
Second.
It has been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, let it be known by voting yes. All those opposed, no. And the like signs have it, and it passes. Next item, please.
Thanks, Bob.
G2, resolution approving financial assistance to Project Scout pursuant to NCGS 158-7.
Mr. Raleigh.
Yes, ma'am. Chairman Adams, this item authorizes the city to provide up to $266,506 in economic development assistance to Project Scout to be distributed over a 7-year period. The city's financial assistance will be used to help offset the company's capital outlay associated with the upfit of the space at the company's prospective new location in Winston-Salem, much like the previous project discussed. What we know about Project Scout at this particular point is that Project Scout is a privately held company that provides ownership, data management, analytics, and advisory services to public and private companies. We also know that the Project Scout employs approximately 1,500 employees across North America and has annual revenues of in excess of $350 million. Project Scout will involve the establishment of back office operations to support its business. The facility is anticipated to house positions in back office and customer support operations. And other types of positions include IT, legal, finance, and HR positions at this new base of operation. It's anticipated the project will create between 367 and 444 new jobs over its first 3 years of operation, with an average wage of approximately $39,000. And Project Scout is also estimating that they could employ up to 400 temporary employees located at this particular facility to support its cyclical project requirements. I would be happy to answer any questions you have. And again, Mr. Lick is here with Wisby, who has been shepherding this project through as well.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? I think this project is somewhat similar to the last project, and I think for me, all of the comments that we heard about the other project need to be taken for this one as well. Is that okay with the council?
Yes.
All right. May I have a motion for approval, please?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, let it be known by voting yes. All those opposed, like sign, and the motion passes. Next item, please.
G3, resolution approving acquisition of 226 South Liberty Street, assumption of current lease with the state of North Carolina and new lease with New Winston Museum, located in the Southwood.
Mr. Rock.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, members of the City Council.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Back in April, the Mayor and the City Council approved $33 million in new financing to address some emerging capital needs that have been identified since the 2018 bond referendum. Included in that was $1.75 million to acquire 226 South Liberty Street, which was the former location of the U.S. Bankruptcy Court building. Last month, myself and Dr. Wakeford, who is the interim executive director for New Winston Museum, presented a framework for a potential lease if the city acquires the property, for the city to lease the first floor of New Winston Museum to the bankruptcy court property to New Winston Museum, for them to repurpose it into a museum space. And at the time, there were a number of questions and requests for information. That information is included in the agenda packet today. Dr. Wakeford, along with members of the New Winston board, are here to answer any questions you have about the information they provided. But today, before you is an action item. And there are three components to it. The first one is a resolution approving the acquisition of the property from the Conservation Fund for a total cost of $1,643,455, and that basically covers the purchase price as well as the Conservation Fund's costs for the property. Second component is assumption of the lease that the current owners have with the state of North Carolina for leasing the second floor space. So under that, the city would simply assume that. The current owners leased about 2,500 square feet of space on the second floor to the state at about $25,000 a year. They are currently in the first year of a one-year renewal period, so we would assume that as well as the remaining one-year renewal. And then after that, at some point, the city staff would potentially negotiate a longer-term lease with the state of North Carolina for use of that space. And then finally, the resolution includes a proposed lease with New Winston Museum for the repurposing of the first floor space of the building. After the information I was presented last month, city staff had ongoing discussions with officials from New Winston Museum to work out the details of a potential lease. And what's before you in the council action request form are the key elements of what that lease would look like. What staff is proposing is a 10-year lease with one 10-year extension, a rental rate of $1 per month or $12 per year. And as part of that arrangement, the city would retain the first $10,000 of the $24,900 that we would receive from the state for the second floor space, and then the balance would be provided to New Winston Museum for them to use to cover the operating costs for that second floor space as well as any other additional building operating expenses. What we're trying to work out is a triple net lease whereby New Winston Museum would basically assume the operating and maintenance of the whole building, and also they would be responsible for upfitting that first floor space into museum space. As part of the lease proposal, also the division of responsibilities between New Winston Museum and the city. As I mentioned, New Winston Museum would be responsible for operating and maintenance, daily maintenance expenses for the building, and the city would still be responsible for major maintenance, which would include the roof, the HVAC, our mechanical systems, and the parking lot. So those are the three components that are before you today. The third part of the resolution with the proposed lease is subject to the upset bid process that we would have to go through before we would secure a lease with New Winston Museum. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you have, and as I mentioned, Dr. Wakeford and members of the New Winston Museum Board are here to answer any questions that you may have about the information that they provided.
Mayor Pro Tem.
This is not about the information, but in this first sentence, when you talk about whereas in April the 2019, the mayor and city council approved over $33 million, that is not a correct sentence. Who writes these up? Who does the writing? This is not the only time I've seen it, and you need to correct it because we have a city manager council form of government. Pretty soon, if Raleigh decides that the mayor would have a vote, it should be worded whereas the mayor who presides. Nothing we do on this council can we not do unless the mayor is presiding. And when he presides, then he's the one who carries us through all these motions that we can approve or disapprove. I just put that out there so we could have the information right.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any questions, comments from the members of the board? The council. Councilman McIntosh.
A couple things. So really, we're talking about this as if it's a $1.6 million acquisition, but it's really about a little over $2 million acquisition when we factor in the maintenance that we would have to do before they could take charge of it. The maintenance number, we walked through it recently, and maintenance number is a little higher than I expected because I thought the building was in very good condition. It was in better condition than I expected. So I'm a little surprised by the deferred maintenance numbers. But the other question is that the upstairs is currently rented to the state of North Carolina at probably what is below a market rate. if they were to leave, the estimate here that I'd ask you to get, thank you for that, is that we could get $14 to $15 per square foot. I think that's probably true. At that time, what happens to the split on the lease income? Do we remain as a $10,000 partner in that, or does it change, as a ratio? I would think that if the rent goes up, that we would capture more of that.
Councilman McIntosh, we haven't worked out that particular detail, but that would be something that certainly we would negotiate in anticipation of a potential new leasee if we didn't continue to have a lease with the state of North Carolina.
Okay. That's all I had as far as questions.
Any other comments?
Did they say anything about refitting? Who will be upfitting the building?
The New Winston Museum would upfit the first floor space into a museum space.
Would we have anything to do with upfitting anything?
No, ma'am.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Rao and staff. And again, thanks to the New Winston Museum Creative Corridors and Conservation and all of the parties that participated in bringing this forward. I know a lot of you have heard my concern with this item. Again, being an elected official, I have no issue with whatever any of us use our votes to vote for, but I can't support this. Again, I always look back at the history of this city when you take me there, in that we continue to put everything downtown. We continue to feel like if we put it there, then people will come. Yeah, people that live downtown and tourists, but for the most part, the people that live on the other sides of town, I don't see us running down there like that. I don't see us getting on a bus. I don't see us driving cars and family, and I just don't see it. And I am concerned about the upkeep as this project goes forward. Councilmember Larson, again, I'm just one of 8. And if the process was that everybody just get along and vote for everything that everybody thinks is the best thing, that wouldn't be democracy in my book. Again, I have no issue with the project of those that want to see it through. But for me, as my, representing the North Ward and the people that I've gotten calls from, I can't honestly support this. So if there's no more comment, if the council member wants to comment.
May I?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. And perhaps maybe somebody from the New Winston Museum might be allowed to comment on it, because, in fact, this is about Winston-Salem. It's not really about one ward. Well, it's about a question of whether or not we are going to tell the whole history of this city and how we do it. And we're fortunate. I mean, this project has evolved. Many of you know it has evolved over time from the idea of looking at one family, the Peter Oliver family, which was an extraordinary history of an individual who rose up out of slavery and became the beginning of a long history of a family that has contributed over decades to this city. But more importantly, to me, what has been fascinating about this project as it's evolved is the amount of community input and the amount of partnerships that have developed over that time. Everybody from North Carolina School of the Arts to downtown groups to African American history societies to the New Winston Museum Creative Corridors. Everybody's beginning to look at this, and we're seeing this as an opportunity to raise the city up and talk about something that needs to be said and talked about, a very specific history, a very broad history as well, and there's nobody more capable in place in the New Winston Museum to do that. They have a history of undertaking stories of this town and telling them well, and they will populate the site, use it, and now, instead of tearing a building down, we've got a building possibility that will enhance the travel and tourism industry. It's 1 block away from the City Visitor Center. It's 1 block away from the downtown. It's on a main cultural corridor to the School of the Arts, Old Salem. And I think ultimately it'll prove to be one of many assets in this city that will allow visitors, the residents of this town as well, to enjoy their past. And it's going to be accessible. It's going to be on the strollway. It's going to be on the multi-use pathway. And there couldn't be a better location and a better story to be told, I think, than what is being proposed by the New Winston Museum. Now, I'm pleased by the people coming together. As you know, this has developed rather rapidly. This opportunity has arisen. The Conservation Fund, which we're familiar with, stepped up and did some remarkable work in negotiating the prices on it, and gave us an opportunity to grab something and go with it. And I applaud this council for having the flexibility to take an opportunity and grab hold of it and move the city forward on its cultural landscapes and its historical landscapes. So I don't know whether you want to have anybody from the Winston Museum or allow them to speak. But
I'm glad I heard from you, but this committee and this council has heard from
everybody.
The parties that be, and right. I think we're at a point right now, because it's an action item.
Right.
We only need to hear from the committee and the council. Councilmember Scipio. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a very interesting project. There are a couple of things that I like about where we're going with this. Having just seen a fabulous grand opening of Union Station that brought all kinds of people out to see a building that had been there for years, and the neighborhoods that changed. It's still a fabulous building. I think when we have public spaces that we are now buying, it's up to us as the council and the city to make those spaces accessible to all people and to tell that story. From a management viewpoint, I think we always should have tenants to help us sustain those buildings and offset the cost of them. So to that, I love the fact we have a tenant going in, and we'll hear about the new tenant proposed for Union Station. We can't just keep giving spaces away to people because we incur costs. So our taxpayer dollars, we must look at being smart and trying to offset them. But when I heard about let's buy this bankruptcy court property because it happened to have been the Peter Oliver site of his farm, I personally said, why tear the building down? We don't have a museum in Winston-Salem. We don't have a place that people can go and absorb our history, which is very unique for a southern city. The way I looked at it, because I'm a community historian, is that many African Americans don't know our early beginnings. The first African Americans came to Bethabara. Then they came to Salem. So what a wonderful place to start telling our story than where it was in the 1800s and moving forward. And as we know, we have a new committee, the African American Heritage Initiative, and the primary goal of that is to mail our history, the African American history, into the permanent history of this city. And I saw the new Winston Museum proposal as a museum, as a site where that can be, so that people can come and see our history as they see and experience the history of this community. So I'm very much in favor of this movement. I've spoken with the new Winston Museum, who has always been favorable about inclusion of our history. Early on when they got organized, the partnership with the Society for the Study of African American History, which is now the Archive, they had office space in their space on Marshall Street. They've done exhibits primarily about the African American culture, and they have archived some of our materials in their facilities. So I see it as a real natural partnership for the African American community. And I think once the museum is established, it's up to the council and other African Americans to drive people down to that facility. I grew up here, and I can tell you we were not, well, I won't say we weren't welcome, but going to Old Salem was not something that was a reach and bring us there as children. And it hasn't been, so we could see our history, because it wasn't until 1990 that Old Salem started to include the African American presence in its history. So I think this is a wonderful direction for the city. We'll have a long-term tenant, hopefully, in the building that we own that would help offset some of those costs. And it's a way of pulling our community together culturally, hopefully spiritually, in a very nice environment.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, Madam. I was concerned when we mentioned some of the people who are the ancestors, or descendants rather, of Mr. Peter Oliver. Now, this museum, the folks who managed it, I've not met any of these people. And I've been in this city a long time. Not a one of them with the museum, I could be making a mistake, has come to say anything. But then I heard more through Mr. Larson about them. But I want to go back to Old Salem. Mr. French was the head of Old Salem. And I had a meeting with him to tell him the very same things that you're saying, Councilwoman Scipio. We don't feel welcome in Old Salem. You're not making, and it's in the minutes from previous conversations. When I made that statement, he was in my office that next day saying, we can do better. And what he did, he made it a very historical occasion where a lot of the history showing the role of blacks during slavery time in Old Salem. And of course, Mr. Larson, you were a part of him hiring someone to bring that history out so the public could see that blacks played a major role. It was just really, that's a penalty. How much is he going to go to court to be fined for? But anyway, to have our history told is most important, and to feel comfortable when our history is being told. The concerns that I get from people when you mention Peter Oliver's descendants, one of them is he's passed, but he's a real rich man. Then you've got another one when you call Chris Paul. I call his grandfather, Brother Paul. But when you talk about Chris, he's a rich guy. So I think if we're asking us to do some things, what are they doing? How are they participating? That's the question that I have. Do you know Mr. Larson?
I don't know. I know, and I know both creative corridors, and I suspect New Winston can talk about this, but I've been in contact with both of those families. Obviously, I think the question is there something for them to invest in at this point? And certainly the New Winston Museum and the interpretation of that site, African American presence on that site, I think would then be validated for them to do that.
And then the other thing that has been mentioned, the other people who were slaves during that time, they surely need to be made known. We also show where they got to start down there with, what was that man's name? Freeze.
Francis Freeze.
That's where the blacks first stayed. They stayed in the house, so the folks tell me, the black freezes. And then they overflowed and they built a 3 shotgun. They overflowed from in that one. They built another one, and then they sent them down into Winston-Salem, where you have the Atkins Apartments, WSSU. And then where's the role of the ones that's in your ward? How are they going to be brought into with the ones down? Because they most certainly contribute in Bellevue. So it's going to be a history. It shouldn't be one-sided. It should be a full story. That's all, Madam.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Taylor.
I'll try to be as brief as possible. I've learned that over the last 10 years that I've been on this council, where you stand depends on virtually where you sit. From my vantage point, number one, this particular museum is in close proximity to the southeastern portion of the city. This is a city project, but there is also the opportunity to tie in to Bellevue, Happy Hill, and some of the other historic neighborhoods into this particular facility. I have spoken to, the council members who are pushing this project. I've given you my word that I would support this for a number of reasons, and I plan to stand by my word. I've also heard from Mr. Terry, Fred Terry, who is a valued, trusted member of our community, and some of the other folks on the board who've talked a little bit about the project and what they're proposing. I think this is a good deal that will chronicleize the history of our city, and I'm unapologetic about this. There are other people here who fit this description. I'm just going to talk about me. I'm a native son of this community. I get to represent the area that I was born and reared in. We get the opportunity to chronicleize that area and the entire city, and from my vantage point, from where I sit, based on the citizens who I represent, this makes sense. I think it's a decent deal, and if it makes it out of committee, and it looks like it might be a tough sale, I will support it on Monday.
Any more comments? Because I got to get to Councilmember Taylor's meeting. It is an action item. May I have a motion for this item, G3?
Make a motion to approve.
I second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, let it be known by voting aye and yes, and all of those opposed vote no. City Attorney, this moves to the council on Monday, correct? It does. Because Councilmember Clark isn't here, this is for the television audience, that we have a majority because he's not here. Okay, good enough. Thank you so much. G4 is for information, and could you go ahead and tee that one up, Mr. Rao?
G4, information about potential lease of space in Union Station to Winston-Salem State University, located in the East Ward.
Good afternoon again, Madam Chair, Mayor Joines, Mayor Pro Tem Burke, members of the City Council. As we know, the city has invested over $18 million in the redevelopment of Union Station. Representatives from Winston-Salem State have approached city management, I believe also elected officials, about their interest in leasing space in the building due to its proximity to the campus, and they specifically are interested in about 8,000 square feet that they would like to upfit to support their passport acceptance agency, their print shop, to provide a one-stop operation for enrollment management, to provide campus tours, and also for admissions. So there's two components to the discussions that we've had with them. First is a lease of that space. At this point, what we've kind of worked through in terms of a framework is that the city would upfit the space. We would pay for that cost. Our city engineering division is working with their architect on coming up with a cost estimate for that. As part of that lease, the city would have an initial lease rate that would be set to enable the city to recover the cost of that upfront, cost of the upfit, and then an adjustment to that lease rate to where then the income from the lease would cover the operating costs for that space. The second part of the framework we've discussed is the idea of the city contracting with the university to actually maintain the building for the city and to provide grounds maintenance, housekeeping, some facility maintenance, basically your daily maintenance, not your major maintenance type of work, public safety, manage overflow parking, and even perhaps provide some event management services if there's a desire to hold events perhaps in the top floor of the building. So this is an information item, just to give you kind of the framework of what we're looking at. As part of a potential lease, both the university and the city would contribute towards a maintenance reserve, kind of similar to how we have a lease in place for Bowman Gray Stadium field house. But those are really kind of the broad strokes of what we've been discussing with university officials. I'll be happy to answer any questions. And as well, Constance Millette, the Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration, she is here today, and she can answer any specific questions you may have about their proposed use of that space.
I don't have any questions for them. I have a request from staff. For me, again, personally, I know we are in a contract situation with Winston-Salem State at the stadium. I know that the taxpayers are in for over $9 million of the bond monies and other things that we've done over the years to keep that stadium up to some standard for the school. I would like to see other recommendations on what we can do with this train station besides again, get in a contract with Winston-Salem State, same contract we got at Bowman Gray. I would like to look at us making it an incubator space of minority businesses or whatever. What could we do with that? Go look at some other schools or other cities that have had the same type of real estate. I'd like programs like SOAR, employees and graduates to be able to train and do this job of $178,000 for upkeep and maintenance. I would rather we use that money towards making our citizens better already. That's my request, and, you know, Mayor Pro Tem.
It sounded impressive. I did like and seemed like the councilwoman thought it was a pretty good idea. I know we need to use the facility, and it's a very lovely place. It's a historical place, and I don't have any problems with what I've heard about the use of it. I do have a problem that I can't do anything about. How when we did that stadium, that's old hash information, but they didn't do nothing but play us.
Mm-hmm.
We never should have allowed Wake Forest to get what they want unless we got what we wanted. And after they got what they want, then the state made sure we didn't get what we wanted. That was for that stadium to belong to Winston-Salem State University. And then for someone to tell me, and I'll say this to the chancellor's face, when someone said that the chancellor said they didn't want it anyway, that's just hearsay. I cannot believe a chancellor of one of the universities would say that, as progressive as the alumni and people have worked to even have a stadium. And it was nothing but politics. That's all it was, because those racers want to make sure they stayed over there and they would be in control. And then you take so much of our bond money, did you say $9 million?
$9 million.
And then going to put it in something, not including the money we've already spent
$20 million.
with them. I don't understand, and that's why some of the citizens talk about I'm not on you, city manager, talk about the leadership of us, with the mayor and us leading it, that sometimes we don't lead it quite like we ought to lead it. This is not what I call fair as far as how we're spending money that could be more resourceful with some other things east of 52. But I'm not against your project with the Union Station.
Councilman McIntosh.
Excuse me, a couple questions. It sounds as if we're still negotiating a lease rate. Is your anticipation that the lease rate will be a market rate?
At this point, I'm not sure. We want to make sure that we recover our cost of the upfit over a reasonable amount of time.
I probably will not be supportive unless that lease is at a pretty close to market rate, because we're going to be tying into somebody here who's going to be there for a long time. And anything below market rate is going to end up costing us in the long run, whatever that delta is. Will we pay commission on that? No. So whatever we lease it at is what we get. Are we in any trouble of violating our requirement to have this space be 51% transportation related?
It enhances it with the passport office.
Mr. Rao.
I mean, my understanding is that we've programmed 51% of the space for transportation-related purposes, and so this would be the space that's available for non-transportation related.
I'm assuming you guys, I know you're well aware of that, but I just wanted to clarify that.
It's
Thank
for
you.
information. Anything else? Councilman Larson.
This is another example of a partnership which always fascinates me, and the nice thing about it, I see about it, there's a very public face to this. Winston-Salem State is, of course, an important part of our community, but the services of a post office, a passport office, a printing shop, the kinds of things that students would use, but as well as the public could use, I think begins to merge those lines between public and the university cap and gown and town, as it were, and so it becomes a meeting place. They've done a great job of the building. We can be very proud of Union Station. Now, how do we populate it, and how do we get people in it and make them relate to it? And if the university is going to be involved, I'm pleased that we're looking at functions that fall outside of exclusively the student union and bring in the public as well to make that meeting there. So.
And Madam, I would like to say when people go get their passports, it's such complicated going on the campus.
Yes.
I mean, it's
Gonna be a
just
huge
all tied up,
improvement.
and they run over there to get it. This is the closest place, and so we do need a place for passports.
And I think, Mr. Rao, what even the comments from the committee and the council is saying, and I'm sure, again, no issue with WSSU. I went there, Overbound, all my sisters, everybody went there. I'm just saying, we keep talking about we're doing things for the community, but we are actually putting mechanisms in place to keep the community from really being a part of the process and it going forward. All I'm asking is, and mine's just a question, what else can we do with this that can be inclusive of the community? The school is part of the community, but the school is the state. See, everybody leaves that out. It's the state, about like the state at the other building. What are we doing to include the community that lives in it, that there is a success story that can be written, instead of us just always giving things away that belong to the taxpayers, whether they're the poor taxpayers or the rich taxpayers. We have got to be more equitable in what we're doing, and we got to think about it versus just being so happy to do it. We need to start spending just a little bit, slow it down. We just need to think a little bit more, because from what I'm hearing, the citizens want to see us do more to be inclusive of them versus those folk that, you know, I think a passport is great. I think what the school does, but what can we do besides give them all of the pie that we can make sure that we have more inclusiveness of the citizens in that building, just as like the other one. That's all I'm saying.
Madam, I will say this.
Mayor Pro Tem, and we're
now,
gonna
the church
go
is
ahead.
over there, and some of their businesses, they need to have somebody to stop them students from violating the rights of church people when they're having their funerals, and we've been back and forth over there, and if they maybe had something out there, it would have better control. And I love Winston-Salem State. I got a big scholarship over there, isn't that right, Mayor?
You got a doctor.
Oh, yeah, but I think that we need to do something to help them to be able to control where people can't even go to their churches when their funerals. They park all in front of the spaces in front of when they try to pick up their trash and everything. So the community has been calling out help.
I know it. All righty then. Thank you, Mr. Rao and staff. I think you've got your marching orders. Councilmember Taylor, Chair, I'm so sorry.
It's quite all right.
But,
Public safety can convene this.